tournament. And with Major League Baseball opening day approaching and the NHL season hitting the final stretch, what will other major sports leagues do? It's SportsCenter AM.
An incredibly bizarre evening for the NBA.
Like out of a movie. It's not even real.
The game tonight has been postponed. Good night, fans.
Yeah, SportsCenter AM on this Thursday morning. Nicole Briscoe and Randy Scott alongside. And I think if we're being honest, right, it's a SportsCenter unlike any other for us because we are going to remember March 11th, right? Wednesday night as the night that the NBA as a league took a timeout.
Rudy Gobert has tested positive for COVID-19, coronavirus. It wasn't just an unprecedented night in sports. This was an unprecedented night in our country. We're going to focus on the sports angle, and let's bring in our Royce Young, who is in Oklahoma City. Now, you witnessed the event that led to Jazz Thunder being called off. So how did this all unfold in front of your very eyes?
Nicole, it was really kind of an incredible situation. If you just rewind the clock a little bit, pre-game, Steven Adams is walking in under the new media protocol, sitting down at a table, making a comment about asking if it had been wiped down before he sat down of it. And I asked him about the idea that he might be playing games at some point in front of empty arenas with no fans. Already a preposterous situation. And little did we know, just within an hour, basically, it was going to escalate and dissolve to an unthinkable, unimaginable situation. With seconds, literal seconds, before the ball went up between the Oklahoma City Thunder and Utah Jazz on Wednesday, Thunder Director of Medical Services Donnie Strack came sprinting onto the court to call a huddle with the game's 3 officials.
You see the officials conferring here prior to the start of this game. A late conference here, trying to get something worked out.
On the floor, players from the Thunder and Jazz went through some final stretches and elbow bumps. The pregame hype song started a second loop as Strack continued to discuss with the refs. Players walked around, confused and curious. Chris Paul approached the Utah bench and asked, "What's wrong with Rudy?" The Jazz players told him to get away. The word Strack was given was to delay the start of the game because Jazz big man Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. Players exited the floor, with both teams quarantined in their locker rooms. Moments later, with games still in progress, the NBA announced it was suspending the season.
These games tonight are going to finish, and then that's where the hiatus will start.
Thunder players were lined up and given a fever test on their cheek, then left and advised to self-quarantine for 24 hours. While the Jazz sat in a circle in their locker room with blue medical gloves and masks on for hours, waiting for CDC officials to arrive to test them for the virus. As they waited for results, arrangements were being made for the Jazz to possibly spend the night at the arena. But 6 hours after Strack sprinted onto the floor and set the wheels in motion to what would result in the suspension of the NBA season, with a police escort, 2 buses pulled out of the loading dock of Chesapeake Energy Arena, en route to a local hotel, taking the Utah Jazz, the NBA, and other professional sports into uncharted territory. And just to bring us up to date on what we know at the absolute latest, Nicole, I was told last night that the Utah Jazz did leave the arena. They are staying in a hotel in Oklahoma City, and right now they are awaiting their results. They were told that it would take anywhere between 4 to 6 hours to find out if anyone did test positive for the virus. And if that is the case, they're trying to make arrangements on how to get back to Salt Lake City, which could include, sources told me, having a negative charter plane and a positive charter plane, that they would split the team up and then fly them back. They would have hotels ready in Salt Lake City to put some players in that would be positively quarantined and negatively quarantined.
Royce, I feel like if I didn't ask you this question, I would be making a mistake. But you, as far as your job goes, you are someone who is around these players almost daily. What advice have you been given as to what you now need to do?
Essentially, Nicole, the same as everybody else. You know, the Thunder were not exposed directly to the virus, and so they were advised to monitor their own symptoms, check to see if that they might have a rising fever, and self-quarantine for 24 hours. And that's essentially what they told all the media that came into contact with players and staff and personnel tonight. Now, I will say some of the Utah Jazz media that have been around Rudy Gobert directly, we've seen the clip of him touching the recorders. They actually were tested for the virus last night, I believe. So it is a little bit different, but everybody's just trying to get through this. It's an unthinkable situation, and it's hard to really understand what anybody's next steps should be, much less me or the Utah Jazz.
It is very much a developing story, and as it develops, Royce will be back with us to keep us up to date on the news. Now, as far as Gobert and his health is concerned, he did not take part in shoot-around, but he was listed as questionable because, according to Jazz head coach Quinn Snyder, Gobert was feeling well enough to play. And the Magic's Evan Fournier provided a little more insight into Gobert's health with this tweet. Was just on the phone with Rudy. He's doing good, man. Let's not panic. Love you all.
All right, meanwhile, the last game of the night was supposed to be the Pelicans and the Kings from Sacramento, but that too was postponed even after the announcement of the suspension of the season. You're going to hear the name Courtney Kirkland today. Here's why. He was supposed to be one of the referees for that Pels-Kings game, but there he was working on Monday. There you see Rudy Gobert. It was the Raptors, it was the Jazz, it was Chippy. He was in close proximity to the All-Star Center. We know Gobert now, right, has been tested positive for the coronavirus. So taking you back to Wednesday night, that news of Kirkland's involvement with Gobert Monday reached the Pelicans locker room, and they wouldn't come out, even as the Kings were on the floor with about 16 minutes to go before tip-off, going through their pregame routine. NBA issuing a second statement that read in part, quote, the game was canceled out of an abundance of caution because one of the referees assigned to work in that game also worked a Utah Jazz game earlier this week. Close quote. That, of course, on the heels of the league announcing that a Jazz player had preliminarily tested positive for COVID-19. Good morning now to the man who reported that player as Rudy Gobert, ESPN senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski with us this morning on SportsCenter AM. And Woj, in the matter of hours on Wednesday, we went from the Warriors planning to play in an empty arena to now Rudy Gobert's positive test to the league suspending play indefinitely. What can you tell us about how those hours played out in the league offices?
Randy, Commissioner Adam Silver had essentially planned to come out today and announce that the NBA was going to continue the games, but do so without fans in the stands. That was the expectation after he had finished up a conference call late yesterday afternoon with the team, with the league's board of governors, essentially the owners, and most owners were on board with just allowing the games to continue, but again, doing so without fans. And then that all changed when the Jazz informed the league office that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. And the league moved from there to suspend play around the league and for the foreseeable future. And now the league is on hiatus as they try to figure out and move toward what their next steps will be. The adaptability, the maneuverability league-wide to make that decision and make that move in that tight of a time window is unprecedented. It's astounding, Woj. And what's been the reaction now from teams to this league-wide decision to go ahead and suspend the season? You know, most teams, if not all teams, were on the phone to the league office late last night trying to get answers to questions that the league wasn't ready to give them. And, essentially the league office told teams, sit tight. We're going to get back to you on Thursday morning. League officials worked overnight through contingency plans and how they move forward next. Teams were told that your practice facilities, can house your players. You can have practices, workouts. Most teams in the league that I spoke to late last night, if not all, were going to give their players today off. Some were even going to close their facility down, knowing that there's going to be a significant stretch of time here without play. Allow players, with some teams, there's testing that has to be done. Players that played the Jazz in recent weeks who've come into contact with Rudy Gobert. So, you're going to see really now front offices, organizations, just try to stabilize their own organizations and then wait and see about what the rest of the season might look like and when, if at all, it's going to restart.
Stabilize the organization is certainly a significant point here, but also a significant period of time is something to note as well. Adrian Wojnarowski with the Insight. Woj, we appreciate it. This is just such an unprecedented time in the league's history, and we heard Woj. We talked with him about the reaction from teams. Well, how about owner Mark Cuban here? We got to see his reaction. ESPN cameras capturing one of the most famous faces and one of the most famous owners in North American pro sports, and he got the news in the same manner that so many of us did on his phone. His Mavs hosting the Nuggets in their final game before the halted play, and then he spoke with Tom Rinaldi.
This is crazy. This can't be true. I mean, it's not within the realm of possibilities. It seemed more like out of a movie than reality.
How do you assess the decision?
I mean, I trust Adam. I mean, you know what? It's really not about basketball or money. I mean, literally, if this thing is just exploding to the point where, you know, all of a sudden players and others have had it, you think about your family. You know, you want to really make sure you're doing this the right way, you know, because now it's much more personal. And you've seen what's happening in other countries, but just the whole idea that it's come this close and potentially a couple of players have it, just stunning isn't the right word. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's kind of a scary situation. I've been around the game a long time. I don't ever remember the season being paused in the middle of it or at the end of it because of this pandemic that is occurring right now across the globe. So it's scary. I mean, this is, you lose a game and you get upset, take a step back. You think about how this is affecting millions and millions of people around the world.
It shows you how, you know, fragile it is. Here it is, a player that is in our league that, you know, a lot of players have come in contact with. So that's a concern, and that's the prudent. That's why it's prudent for Adam to you know, suspend the season until we get a hold of it and get a grasp of it.
We heard through social media from two of the biggest stars in the game, LeBron James tweeting, man, we canceling sporting events, school, office work, et cetera, et cetera. What we really need to cancel is 2020.
You may not be wrong.
Damn, it's been a rough 3 months. God bless and stay safe. And Steph Curry echoing that sentiment, 2020 ain't it. Don't know what to compare the situation to. Just got to buckle up, take care of yourself and those around you.
Curry was tested for this last week. He was tested for coronavirus.
Okay.
Tested negative. But remember when he missed his second game back due to flu-like symptoms?
Yeah.
They tested him.
Okay. Well, that is certainly worth noting. Basketball will be back. Curry continuing at some point. But right now, protect yourself and stay safe out there.
Coming up, normalcy. What is it? When is it going to return to the NBA? When is it going to return to our daily lives? We're going to talk to a doctor about what we should be expecting from this.